Hey guys, so I just wanted to share a quick word today about vanity and about um, how we as Christians should strive to see through the correct lens, which is a spiritual lens. Jesus said, or the Word of God says that set your mind on things above, right? Which I think in a general sense means don't set your mind on the things that you can see, but set your mind and your hearts on the things that are invisible. It's really hard to do because it takes faith in order to do that. Um, and a lot of times, vanity is our greatest enemy. It's a part of the flesh that really is dead, but needs to be put to death daily. You know, and so the verse I want to use to explain what I'm talking about is something that Jesus said to the Pharisees from the Gospel of Luke. He said, "What is esteemed in the sight of men is an abomination to God." What is esteemed in the sight of men is an abomination to God. And to be quite honest, the world and the culture of the world and societal norms, societal standards, right, have corrupted the church in many ways, or should I say, have crept into the doctrines of the church in many ways, because there's a lot of vanity involved. And the Pharisees, Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees, seem to have everything going for them outwardly. They had the degree, they were recognized scholars. They dressed in fine clothing, and they appeared so holy. They probably had a lot, pretty wealthy. A lot of them, they were well fed. They were well respected by everybody. And Jesus said, basically, he was telling them, it's an abomination to me. These people might think so highly of you, but God sees you in a different way. All the things, the outward things that you have to show for yourself, they don't mean much to God. He judges the heart, right? He judges the inner person, and inside they were filled with filthiness and wickedness and covetousness, selfishness, greed, pride, self-righteousness, right? And the question is, how can we apply this verse to the times that we're living in and our actual lives? Because many times society will try and create the standard of success that we are trying to attain to. Society respects certain things. Society respects a certain job, a certain degree from a certain college, to look a certain way, dress a certain way, to go to the gym and have a certain type of physical fitness, to eat a certain type of food, to have a certain number of children, and to have a good-looking wife or spouse or whatever, to be good at this sport or that sport, or to have a nice car or house or whatever it is. All of these things, they're esteemed, highly esteemed by the world, right? The fame, the money, the power, the influence, right? These are things that are so highly esteemed by the world, but they're an abomination to God. They're an abomination to God. And I'm not saying that those things in and of themselves are evil, but if we use those things to feel okay about ourselves, to feel like a success, to feel like we're better than other people, then guess what? It's an abomination to God. You know, a lot of times, even as Christians, even in the church, we've let these worldly standards and this worldly measuring stick dictate whether or not we see ourselves or others as successful. And I'm telling you, it is an abomination to God. Because it only leads to comparison. You see, many people don't even realize that they're doing this, but they measure their own success based upon things like this: the job, the outer appearance of things and possessions and things that'll fade away. You know, maybe the respect of their peers, being recognized as a teacher or a prophet or some kind of an amazing minister of God or whatever, which is not a bad thing. But if we use these things to build ourselves up or to feel okay about ourselves, like we are a success, then I think we are not walking in wisdom. You know, because there's always going to be somebody else who has attained to more success in that area of their life. There's always going to be someone else who's maybe better than us in that area of our lives, or doing better than us in that area of our lives. Maybe they have more money, they have more fame, status, whatever. They're more successful in their ministry or their career, or they have a bigger house or a nicer, newer car. They play the guitar better. Whatever it is, guys, if we are measuring our success by what is esteemed in the sight of men and in the sight of the world, we'll end up comparing ourselves to others, and we'll actually never feel good enough. Because there's always going to be someone out there that we'll find who seems to be doing better than us, or is actually better than us at that. And we'll feel not good enough. We'll constantly actually be in a state of depression because we have chosen to esteem worldly things and the opinions of men and a worldly measuring stick and standard of success rather than the measuring stick and standard of success that God has for us, which is judgment of the heart. Are you doing what you're doing in the motive of love for God and others and not for yourself? That is really what it all comes down to. Because if we don't do what we're doing for the right reasons, it doesn't matter what we do or what we accomplish. It's still worthless at the end of the day. And we got to stop judging people because they don't fit the societal standard that we think they should fit. You know, maybe they don't have a job that we see as good or successful. Maybe they don't have as much money as society tells us we need to have in order to be successful or have a family or whatever. And to be honest, most of the time it's all baloney. Because if we are putting our trust in our own abilities or our own accomplishments, then is our faith and our trust really in God and what He can do to provide for us? You know, and when we compare ourselves to other people, we are always either going to feel like we're better than them based upon our circumstances, or like we're worse than them based upon our circumstances. And actually, the truth is that neither one of those judgments is correct, because we're judging based upon a worldly standard. Now, on the other hand, if we always judge ourselves and compare ourselves to Jesus Christ, then guess what? We will always see room for improvement. We will always find ways that we could be more like Him. And we'll know that the standard that we're trying to measure up to is actually a good and godly standard. But when Jesus Christ was in his ministry, guys, you know, I don't think he was working a job. He didn't have a home, really. He lived kind of like a vagabond in many ways, right? He didn't have a family. He didn't have a wife. He didn't have kids. He didn't have anything that society deemed as successful or legitimate. You know, he was probably judged as a crazy person, maybe even a homeless, lazy person. Who knows? I don't know. But the point is that whatever the judgment was against him, it was wrong. And many of us as Christians, we have let society put us down and actually put us in a state of depression because we are constantly under the bondage of feeling like we're not enough, feeling like we're not doing enough, feeling like our accomplishments are not enough, like we don't make enough money, our house isn't big enough, we might not have kids, or we might not be married, or we might not be some fancy pastor in a church who's recognized and respected by others. But guess what? Jesus didn't have any of those things either. And he was the most successful man that ever lived. The church needs to stop judging themselves and others based upon the standards of the world. What is esteemed in the sight of men is an abomination to God, guys. And I would like to explain how this affects people. Rachel and Leah, were both married to Jacob. Rachel was the more loved wife by Jacob. He loved her more than Leah. But Leah, you see, had way more kids than Rachel, and she was just producing more kids and fruit. Leah had outer fruit to show for herself. Even though she wasn't loved as much or cherished as much by Jacob, she had more outer fruit. Now, eventually, Rachel starts comparing herself to Leah, and Rachel starts to get insecure because Rachel doesn't have any kids yet. Eventually, she comes to God and she says, God, if you don't give me a child, then I'll die. She's saying, if you don't give me any fruit, if you don't even give me any children to show for myself, I'd rather die. And the Bible's very specific as to why she had that thought. It was because she was jealous of her sister. Right? So what did she do? She judged herself, her own worth, based upon her outer fruit or the possession of children that she could give her husband. Right? And because of that, she compared herself to her sister, felt insecure, unworthy, and rejected. And she felt that she was less valuable than her sister. And she became jealous of her sister. So much so that unless she had the things that her sister had, unless God gave her the things that her sister had, she would rather die. And that is what I see in a lot of people's lives, is that they compare themselves to the people of the world. They compare themselves to other people in church, and they look at the things that all these other people have. Maybe the good job, degree, they're a pastor, they have kids, right? They have a beautiful spouse. They're respected by their peers, all these different things. And they say, well, I don't have any of those things, and I want those things, and I'm jealous that they have those things. And they start to feel insecure, unworthy, right? And they devalue themselves because they're What are they doing? They are esteeming the things of men rather than the spiritual things, the things of God. And what is the end result of this? Well, this causes sorrow. It causes so much depression that these people lose the will to live. They think their lives are so insignificant and unimportant because they don't have those successful things that the world tells us we should have, that they can't even get out of bed in the morning. They're so depressed, they don't have the will to live because they don't think that they're worth anything. And the crazy part is that Rachel was not aware that her husband actually loved her more than Leah, even though she didn't have those things, right? And so this is a type and a shadow of Jesus Christ and his bride, the church. You see, Leah represents maybe a fleshly person who's doing a lot of works and has a lot of outward things to show for themselves and seems to be more valuable and more loved by Jesus because of all of the fruit and the things that she has and all the successful things, maybe a lot of money and a car and a house and whatever, respected by everybody. But the one that Jesus finds truly beautiful is the one that is spiritually beautiful and has a beautiful heart and maybe doesn't have all the physical blessings that the world has to offer them. Right? And now both Rachel and Leah, I mean, they're both godly women. I'm not judging them in any way. They're amazing. They're saints, you know. But the point is that we can't lose sight of how beautiful we are to Jesus in our heart and in our spirit just because we might not have the same outward things that other people have. Because the truth is maybe God really does delight in us and find us beautiful right now, just the way we are. And we don't have to get so depressed and jealous about what other people have and get into this state of depression and lose the will to live because we consider our life of so little value because we don't have the outward signs of success. All right, guys, hope that makes sense. God bless you. Amen.